Welcome to the Soulful Insights Podcast. I'm your host, Tandy. Today, we're going to explore the heart of healthy, fulfilling, joyful relationships. We will also be discussing how to redefine traditional relationship dynamics to create partnerships rooted in mutual respect and equality. We will also be covering healthy communication, resolving conflict constructively, addressing toxicity, nurturing sacred intimacy, and overcoming power imbalances. I also want to mention that I am going to go into, this is going to be a little bit longer podcast. I know a lot of my podcasts are long. I'm a talker. That is one of my spiritual gifts. But in that being a spiritual gift of being a talker, I also do talk a lot. But I think this is really important to point out because a lot of people, especially women, but men as well, aren't even aware of some of the things that are abusive in a relationship. A lot of times they're not aware that they are actually in a relationship with a narcissist. I have people personally in my life who are in relationships with narcissists and they don't even know it. And we are going to be talking about financial abuse. We're going to be talking about a lot of things that you may not be aware of. So if you have to, grab a cup of coffee and just put your earbuds in and listen. If you have to break this up into, listening to a half an hour here or there, that's good as well. But this is a deep dive into sacred intimacy, overcoming power imbalances. I'm going to go really deep into every different type of physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse. You name it, we're going to look at it. So this is going to be long, but it's going to be powerful, and it is going to help you see your relationship from a different perspective and hopefully help you either heal that relationship with that person or realize that you need to move on. So let's dive in. Redefining traditional relationship dynamics, especially those rooted in religious dogma, is essential. Yes, I said that. Redefining this is essential for fostering partnerships that thrive on mutual respect and equality. And mutual respect and equality are keys to a healthy relationship. If you don't have mutual respect for each other, and a lot of men want to demand that their wife respect them, especially in religious circles. Respect it's a two-way street. And equality is also extremely important. If you have power imbalances and things like that in a relationship, it is not going to be as powerfully connected and fulfilling. Many conventional norms in society itself are still steeped in religious dogma, and people don't even realize this. There are people that I wasn't raised religious, I'm not religious, and yet they still have a lot of this programming. Maybe their grandparents were religious, or it's just the way that society acts. Some of this sexist crap that we grow up with, as far as you throw like a girl, for example, or calling people dirty names. A man that they want to say is, quote, weak, and they call him vulgar words for female body parts, this type of stuff. All of that sexism, all of that stuff programs us, even though that's clearly not religious, it programs you to see women as less than. A woman doesn't throw as good as a man. A woman's body parts symbolize weakness. So you still can have very sexist ideology, even if you are not religious. So we're going to be looking at all of this. These conventional norms often perpetuate imbalances in relationships, limiting personal growth, and stifling emotional connection within relationships. By challenging these outdated roles, expectations, and this ideology, couples can co-create a dynamic that honors each partner's individuality, values their contributions equally, and supports shared decision making, which is really important in having a healthy relationship dynamic. If you don't want to make the decision, if you're like, yeah, go ahead, whatever, I don't care, that's fine. But when we say my decisions should take precedence or priority over yours because I have authority or I have greater spiritual authority or whatever that is, that imbalance dynamic will impact the health of the relationship. And a lot of times people try to say, no, I'm fine, I'm happy, it's okay. They try to make excuses. Sorry, I forgot to turn the sound off my phone. They try to make excuses for these dynamics and say, I'm okay, or it's not taking my power away, because they believe that God is the one that is dictating this, which is not true. This shift to equality, or away from, this shift towards equality, let's put it this way, this shift towards equality not only deepens trust and intimacy, but also cultivates a balanced, empowering environment where both partners feel seen, heard, and valued, laying the foundation for a truly fulfilling partnership. And I know when I say intimacy, a lot of people, I know where your mind goes. You're thinking this is all about physical, it feels good for 2 minutes, right? That's not what I'm talking about. That is like, that little 2-minute section is like minuscule compared to what true intimacy is and what really makes a relationship mind-blowingly amazing. So we're going to talk about that in our sacred intimacy section. So you definitely don't want to miss that. That's towards the end. So number 1, we're going to begin with the foundations of healthy communication. Now, I want you to, when you're listening to this, I want you to evaluate your relationship. How is the communication in your relationship? What is the communication dynamic? Is there room for healing and growth? Is your partner willing to work with you and open up and go through some healing work? Or do you have a really toxic dynamic? I want you to think about this, because I think far too often we make excuses and we live in situations that are unhealthy for us, and we don't need to. So, healthy communication is the cornerstone of any thriving relationship. It provides a framework for understanding, for connection, which is really important, and mutual respect. A lot of times when you have people in religious circles, any type of religion, there is not mutual respect, because one partner, usually the man, is prioritized over a woman always. And he sees her as less than. And a lot of men won't admit this, even though it's true. If you think a man can be a pastor and a woman can't, you're going to have an unhealthy dynamic in your relationship, because you're always going to see yourself as slightly above her. Her voice is not worthy to be heard in church. Her thoughts, her ideas, her perspectives are not worthy of being taught and seen. There's a problem. That is going to create an unhealthy dynamic in every aspect of your life if you believe those things. So this involves more than just communication, involves more than just exchanging words. It's about creating a safe space where both partners feel heard and valued. Valued is important, valued equally. Healthy communication emphasizes clarity and kindness. Oftentimes, when we don't agree, kindness goes out the window, and that should never happen if you honor and respect the person that you are with, and if you are healthy within yourself. So, when we're communicating, incorporating active listening, expressing needs without blame, paying attention to nonverbal cues, and we're going to talk about this later. By mastering these skills, couples can navigate misunderstandings or disagreements and build deeper trust while avoiding common pitfalls like defensiveness, misinterpretation or misunderstanding, and dismissiveness. Now, you have to have two people who are emotionally, mentally healthy in order to do this. If you have narcissism, if you have emotional immaturity, if you have issues in the relationship, alcoholism, a lot of different imbalances, you can end up, and then the person's not willing to work on things, you're basically at a crossroads, because the defensiveness, the dismissiveness, a lot of that stuff, if they're not willing to feel their own emotions and work within themselves, they're never going to be able to communicate and connect with you. So you definitely need to look at that. So we're going to look at some of the strategies to improve communication in your relationship. And number one is active listening. In order to truly foster open communication, it's important to listen. Okay, so when I say active listening, like I do listen. Maybe. Listen without commenting, without dismissing their emotions. They are allowed to feel however they feel about that. And whatever their emotions are in regards to the topic that you are talking about, their emotions are valid. They are their own and they are allowed to feel them. If you have someone that's dismissing how you feel, they are disrespecting you. And it is not a loving act to dismiss someone else's experience. That may not be your experience, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. Okay? So, you do not dismiss emotions. Also, listening without trying to solve for the emotions. This generally tends to be men who do this, but not always. Like I say, both ends of the spectrum, we all do things. But actually, I guess I should say more logically brained people try to solve for the emotions of other people. They don't want that. Initially, we need to be heard. Those emotions need to be heard. And if they're not, guess what's going to happen? Those emotions are going to escalate. It's like, you didn't hear me, so I'm going to yell louder. You know, if I'm yelling at my husband, I'm trying to get his attention because I need something. So let's say I'm in the basement and he's on the main floor and I'm yelling up there, hey, hon, whatever, and he doesn't hear me. What am I going to do? I'm going to yell louder, right? He doesn't hear me. I'm going to yell louder. This is what happens with emotions. If you try to solve for them or dismiss them, the emotions are going to get stronger and stronger and stronger until you sit down, shut up, and listen. They need to be heard, okay? Don't solve them, none of that. Hear it and allow it. And the next thing is, do not become defensive. And this can be really difficult if you have a partner that blames you. Now, if we're dealing with narcissists, if we're dealing with toxic people, this can also become really difficult because you are constantly belittled, you are constantly blamed. And that is an entirely different situation. And I'm sorry if you can hear the heater in this room. It can be kind of loud. It is 19 degrees outside right now. So my heater's going to keep kicking on. And unfortunately, the heater is behind a door that is right next to me. So it might be kind of loud, and I just want to apologize for that. But I can't keep it warm in here if it doesn't keep coming on. So anyway, if you can hear that, I apologize. So defensiveness. You may have a partner that's defensive and you can't control that with them, but you can avoid blaming them when you're asking for your needs to be met, and we're going to talk about that, which can diffuse some of that. But again, like I said, evaluating this relationship and how healthy is this individual that you're in a relationship with, and how able are they to work on these things with you. That is something that's really important. It doesn't mean you have to leave a relationship, but you need to decide for yourself what you are willing to live with and what you're not. And the last one is, you need to listen without judgment. We all have different experiences. We all have different default programming the way that we grew up, different experiences in life that make us see things in different ways. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And you do need to allow for someone to have a different experience or a different perspective without judgment. So those are really important when you are listening. And I know that that's a lot to ask. But if any of these things come up in your discussions as a couple, so you're commenting on what they're saying, dismissing emotions, trying to solve for the emotions, becoming defensive, judging them, you shouldn't feel that way, you shouldn't think that way, it wasn't that way, this kind of stuff, this discussion will end up spiraling into an argument every single time if you do these things. or it will end up in total shutdown. So it's not going to go well if these things come up in the discussion. Just understand that. Seek to understand instead of letting your mind race trying to solve for the problem or defend yourself. Those two things are usually what people are doing. You're thinking in your mind, I got to solve this problem, or I need to defend myself because they're saying I didn't take the garbage out, or I did. Yes, I did, or whatever, right? Seek to understand. Their perspective is obviously different than yours. Seek to understand and allow a different perspective. Okay? If you're the one speaking, try to use general language to avoid blaming the other person. And I'm gonna give you here in a minute a couple of examples of this to kind of help you start learning how to reframe asking for what you need without blame, because it will definitely diffuse someone who is usually defensive if you kind of learn how to word that. If you truly do care about your partner, this is the time when you can learn more about them on a deeper level and connect emotionally in a way that can foster a fulfilling and deep love that honestly can bring a lot of joy into your life if you can master this. If you have a partner, though, who is unwilling to engage with you in a healthy conversation, this situation is going to require a lot of healthy reflection on whether or not the relationship has a healthy dynamic, and if that is a relationship that you really want to stay in. And only you can decide if that relationship should continue or not. But you do need to honor and respect yourself and find that soulmate, that soul partner for yourself, and not just stay in something because it's comfortable. Number 2 that we're going to discuss in communication is expressing needs without blame. So we talked about this, right? So it's really easy to begin a conversation with your partner like, you never do XYZ, and so I am overwhelmed or upset or whatever, right? You don't do this. You never pay attention to me. You don't do that. You see how that's argumentative just to start out? You just created an argument right there. If you have a really patient partner, maybe not. But you're starting this out attacking them or being blaming. If you begin a conversation like that, attacking and blaming your partner for your feelings or failing to do something that you ask them to do or whatever, is going to end up triggering defensiveness and shutdown. It's not a good way to start out. This is never going to get you where you want to go, okay? So I want to make that very clear. So even if your partner has been engulfed in gaming, constantly scrolling on their phone, failing to do what you ask, whatever it is that you don't like, the best tactic is still to avoid blaming. So let's kind of break this down so that you can understand what I'm saying. Begin by expressing your need. Saying, I feel most happy when we spend quality time together. And I've noticed lately that we've both been busy. We haven't had time for each other. Can we talk about maybe scheduling quality time together? Maybe we could schedule a date night. Maybe that is a way that I'm not blaming my partner for not spending time with me. You never spend time with me. You're always doing this. You're always gaming. I'm not doing that. I'm like, you know what? I really am happy when we spend time together. And we've both been so busy. Can we, and offer a solution? That does not trigger defensiveness. Another example, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now with everything. Would you be willing to help lighten my load by doing XYZ? Whatever. Maybe we can plan time in the evening to get some of these things done. Do you see how much easier that is for your partner to then respond like, oh, sure, I'd love to help you, rather than, you never help me out, I'm so overwhelmed, that kind of thing. You see? Try that out. If your partner endlessly scrolls or games, maybe approach it like, I would really enjoy being able to talk and connect with you. Can we maybe schedule some time every day to go for a walk or to go for a drive and spend some time together? That would really mean a lot to me. See that? Instead of saying, you are always on your phone. See? It's much better, isn't it? So this is a better way of approaching it. And it does take, if you're not used to it, it can take some time to move away from that toxic blaming. Now, if you're the one on the receiving end of the blaming, that's a different situation. But if you notice that when you express yourself without blame and ask for your needs to be met, so if you really don't go at your partner, you need to do this, you need to do that, you're not whatever, but they are still resistant or don't seem to have any concern for meeting your needs, this is again a time to evaluate. Because you cannot have a healthy one-sided relationship. If you are willing to come in and say, hey, I have a need, in a very calm way, and they're like, oh my gosh, if in that situation, you have a toxic dynamic there. And there are a million different ways that you can decide to handle that, but you need to make sure that you are providing for your happiness and for your own mental health, and in a relationship that is respectful. I would definitely say you need to evaluate if that's happening. If you are on the receiving end of the blaming, again, evaluating. Are you doing something, or is this person a toxic person that is always trying to find fault? And it really takes a lot of self-reflection, because I know a lot of people that don't want to look at themselves. And people will say, well, if they're an abusive person, I don't need to look at myself. True. But I've seen a lot of narcissists that, and I'm not calling any of my listeners a narcissist, but if you can't self-reflect, if that's something that you're finding you are just unwilling to do, that actually is showing a problem with you. If you're willing to be like, am I helping out? If you're willing to do a little self-reflection, then that would indicate, obviously, that you can't control another person. So again, if it is a toxic dynamic, again, reevaluating your needs, your desires for your own life. And oftentimes it takes a lot of inner healing and a lot of inner work to be able to see the relationship from a different perspective and notice if this relationship was and is a reflection of inner wounds that you have, rather than a relationship built on healthy connection, love, and respect. And that is something through this entire podcast I want you to keep in mind, because it's really important for your own emotional health and your fulfillment and joy in your life. Your partner is, in large part, plays a huge role in your life. And it is an extremely important relationship. And sometimes we, for whatever reasons, entered into relationships where we weren't aware of certain things. And it may not be a good situation. So it's definitely being open as you're evaluating this. So we're going to move on to number 3, which is nonverbal communication cues. A lot of people miss these. And we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive, and that's why this podcast is going to be a little bit longer, and I apologize for that. But these are so important. I kept thinking maybe I could split this up into parts. No, we need to know all the things. So, I'm going to give you a very in-depth list of nonverbal communication cues that can help you assess your partner during any conversation or interaction that you're having. And this is going to give you a lot of information on what's really going on underneath the things that they're not saying. So, which is really important. This gives you insight into how they are feeling, and whether they're being honest with you, that kind of stuff. So it's really important. These cues can also help you assess the health of your relationship in everyday interactions. So we're going to start with facial expressions. So when someone raises their eyebrows, it can indicate that they don't really believe something or believe what you're saying. They're questioning the truth of what you're saying. It may even be a little bit of a slight towards you. Like, that's ridiculous. Whatever. Something to pay attention to. Tightened lips. They press their lips together. Can indicate that they're attempting to hold back emotions, anger, or disapproval to what you're saying. They're frustrated. Definitely not a good sign. But when you're noticing that, if there's an argument going on or whatever, you may want to just back off a little bit. Obviously, you would recognize positive facial expressions, so we don't need to go over those. Here's a big one. Tightening their lips or raising their eyebrows, not a huge thing. If you're aware and you kind of notice those facial expressions, you may need to take a break, or, I feel like, you're not being very respectful, when you notice the raising eyebrows or, some of those facial expressions. But avoiding eye contact is huge. So if you are approaching a very sensitive topic with your partner, a very relationship determining topic, about honesty, anything like that, if someone's avoiding eye contact with you, they're very uncomfortable. Sometimes this can indicate guilt. They're feeling guilty about the topic that you're talking about. They are uncomfortable. They're trying to avoid the truth. They want to disengage from the conversation. So if you're noticing that you are directly confronting them about something that is of deep concern for you, and they are avoiding eye contact with you, they're avoiding looking at you, and they're being dismissive, you can tell by the language that they're using and the fact that they're avoiding eye contact. They don't want to be honest. They don't want to talk about this. They're uncomfortable. They're feeling guilty about something. This is a huge red flag that something is amiss with this conversation. If you feel like they have done something or something that's of huge impact and they are acting in this avoidant kind of way, I would take that as a sign of something that isn't quite right. So we're going to move to body language. Folding their arms or crossing their arms during a conversation. This is a very defensive stance. People will do this when they're starting to get defensive. Now, this could indicate that you're attacking them, maybe. You're blaming and attacking, and they're feeling attacked, and so they kind of take this defensive stance. So you may want to kind of take note of how you are talking and how you approached the conversation, because they're being guarded. But it could also mean they're being guarded, offish. They're being resistant towards the topic of the conversation. But if it's a topic that you're not attacking, you're just like, hey, I want to know what's going on with this or whatever, and they kind of fold their arms and kind of get that defensive. This is something they're trying to avoid. They are feeling uncomfortable about the truth of this topic. They don't really want to talk about it. I'm not telling you to avoid the hard things when they're avoiding eye contact or they're crossing their arms or things like that. I'm just telling you, if you're seeing this body language, you know that there's something that they are hiding that they don't want to talk about. And they may never want to be forthcoming with it, but you need to decide how you want to react when you notice this kind of behavior, because there is something underlying if this is happening, when it's not in response to you attacking them, right? If you're doing that, this would be more normal behavior. They're going to act defensive because you're attacking them. So make sure that you are being very kind of aware of the situation. Also, leaning back. So if they lean backwards on the chair or on the couch that they're sitting on, this is showing disinterest or a subtle desire to avoid the topic. It might indicate some skepticism about what you're saying, or even just the need for personal space. So if, again, self-reflection, if you're getting in their face and they kind of lean back a little bit, it's because they're like, you're really overdoing it. But if it's just an uncomfortable conversation that they're trying to, quote, lean away from, again, just be aware of that. Shifting their weight and fidgeting. If they're really fidgeting and kind of shifting their weight, something like that, it's showing that they're nervous about what you're talking about, they're uncomfortable with what you're talking about, or they are impatient. so about having this conversation. Maybe you've been talking for a really long time and they just want the conversation to be over. But again, it's showing that there's nervousness and they're uncomfortable. Again, if this is something where you are hitting on a topic that they want to stay hidden, they don't really want you to know the truth about it, you may see this again. But again, I'm not saying, oh, if they're fidgeting or shifting weight, that means 100% they did something, the thing that you think they did. I'm not saying that, but I do want you to notice behaviors, because it will give you just more information about the state of your relationship during conversation. But on a positive note, if they kind of mirror your movements and kind of mirror you in a way emotionally and that, this is a subconscious indication of connection and empathy. So if you notice that, them kind of mirroring your movements, mirroring the way that you're approaching this, your emotions or whatever, that's actually a good sign. You'll also get kind of hand rubbing where they're nervous about what's going on. So again, nervousness isn't necessarily a bad thing, but a lot of times people will get really, really nervous when they feel like something might be getting exposed or something like that. So when you see these nervous, avoidant behaviors, it's definitely something to take note of. Another thing that you'll find in arguments is pointing at you. This is an aggressive sign. It's usually done when they're accusing you, they're pointing blame. So if it's really like getting in your face and pointing at you, this is a very aggressive, probably verbally abusive something is going on. It can be a habit that some people do to emphasize something, but then again, it's not something that they're pointing in your face or they're pointing at you. But if they are doing that, it is aggressive. And there's probably emotions underneath that aggression and that anger. Usually anger is a secondary emotion. There's something underneath that, and they're acting big and aggressive over the top of it. But it is not, if that is happening in an aggressive way, the conversation needs to be stopped. And you just need, this is out of hand. This is getting disrespectful. I am going to take myself out of this situation and we can revisit this later. Do not engage with that. That's all I would say about that one. If someone is touching their face, it's a self-soothing gesture. It might indicate that they're stressed, or that they're kind of processing what's going on. And so, again, I would say just kind of back off a little bit, and allow them to calm themselves down and continue on. Tone of voice, sighing, again, it can be a sign of frustration, not a huge deal. Obviously, the pitch and tone of their voice, you're going to notice that. You're going to notice someone yelling. You're going to notice a lot of those negative things. If they're blinking their eyes rapidly, it might be a reaction to overwhelming information. If they are looking down and they won't look at you, so this is another similar thing to avoiding eye contact. They're looking downward. It's usually shame or insecurity or something they're wanting to avoid. They're feeling guilty about something or shame about something. Be aware of that, because if you are approaching a topic that's really important to the health of the relationship, they're avoiding eye contact, and they're looking downward, it's definitely a sign that there's some shame around what you're talking about. So, not all of these are a huge deal, but some of these nonverbal cues can reveal underlying emotions or thoughts that they are not explicitly voicing, but it can also indicate avoiding topics or guilt or something like that, where you realize they're not being completely honest with you. They're avoiding eye contact. They are looking downward. They're fidgeting. They're shifting their weight. They're acting anxious. They're wringing their hands. A lot of these things are signals to give you a deeper understanding in your conversations, that I can see that if I see some of this behavior, I can see that this person is not being honest with me, that they are being avoidant, and I can pretty much bet that there's something in there that they don't want me to know. And this is not an exhaustive list. This is not like I'm giving you this psychology evaluation or anything like that. I'm not a mental health professional. So I'm not telling you that. This is just basic understanding, basic gestures to help you evaluate conversations and interactions on a deeper level. And also, I think it's really important to know and understand when your partner is not being entirely honest with you, when it appears as if there are things underneath that need to be brought to light so that you can gain a greater understanding for yourself. I just think it's really important in relationships to understand that. Sometimes there's a refusal to have an open conversation, and you can't control what someone else does, but you can control your own responses. And this is where I'm giving you some of this information, basic information, because you need to control your response. If they are avoidant, if they are not willing to work on things, if they are not willing to be completely honest and forthcoming and open in a conversation, this is where you control your response. And this is where a lot of inner work needs to be done to decide how you feel about the lack of open communication, the lack of honesty surrounding this particular circumstance, and then act in a way that is honoring and respectful to you and your needs. If they are never willing to have this open conversation and be completely honest and open about it, it might be a deal breaker for you. I don't know, but you need to reflect on that. So I want you to reflect on your communication with your partner. And I would encourage you to journal about it. Write about what signs you're seeing in your communication. You can even quickly jot down a few thoughts. Just takes 5 minutes, a few minutes to just jot down what you're noticing. Avoiding eye contact, being really defensive about something. You can kind of tell that there's more underlying something that doesn't seem as like a big deal, right? Is your communication healthy? Is it productive? Does it need some work, or is it completely toxic, avoidant? They're accusing you, defensive, they blame you. Dig deep and try to decide how you want to approach improving communication in your relationship. Or maybe this is a good time to assess what kind of relationship you are in. And if your partner is even willing to put in the time and effort to be open and honest and heal this aspect of your relationship so that your relationship can deepen and improve. It's really important to reflect on these things, because the more that we just try to ignore, the more that we stay in toxic situations where we are not happy and we are not able to achieve our soul's purpose on this earth, because we are constantly in a state of fight or flight, or in toxic arguments and situations where we are not allowed to expand and rise, elevate our level of consciousness and become who we were meant to become. Relationships can hold you back profoundly. So I really want you to understand that. So now that we've talked about communication, we are going to move into healthy conflict resolution. Okay, healthy conflict resolution is about transforming disagreements into opportunities for growth and connection. Constructive conflict focuses on addressing issues collaboratively, using, quote, I statements to express feelings and needs without blame. While destructive conflict often involves blame, defensiveness, and escalation of the arguments or of the disagreement. Choosing the right timing and environment for discussions is essential to ensure that both partners feel safe and heard, and not, having public arguments or public, displays of emotion, which can be embarrassing and is just not appropriate. Prioritizing win-win solutions fosters mutual respect and understanding, strengthening your partnership. When conflicts go unresolved, they can erode trust, respect, and intimacy, creating emotional distance and even resentment. By approaching conflicts with patience, empathy, and a problem-solving mindset, couples can navigate challenges while deepening their bond. So I want to look at some tools for healthy conflict resolution. And I also want to say that I am actually going to split this into a 2-part series, because it is very clear to me that this is going to be a very long podcast. Like I said, deep dive into relationships today. So using I statements, what does that mean? I statements help express feelings and needs without placing blame. Avoiding blame is absolutely crucial for healthy communication and for reducing defensiveness. So let me give you a few examples. I feel unheard when decisions are made without me. Focuses on your emotions rather than assigning fault. I feel hurt when plans are changed without discussing them with me. I value being included in decisions. I feel overwhelmed when there's clutter around the house because I need a tidy space to relax. I feel unappreciated when my efforts aren't acknowledged. Recognition is really important to me. I feel disconnected when we don't spend quality time together. I feel anxious when you don't respond to my messages. Okay, and then offer a solution. So when you're saying, I feel unheard when decisions are made without me. So can we just make a plan that we are both included in decisions? Can we, somehow ask for that need to be met? I feel hurt when plans are changed without discussing it with me. Can we come to an agreement that just let me know? I'd really appreciate it if you just let me know. This is how these I statements work. So after the I statement, I feel anxious when you don't respond to my messages. I really like to know that everything's okay. Would it be okay if if you just texted me or let me know or whatever, right? So the I statement, and then just ask for the need to be met. If you've said that you feel unheard when decisions are made without you, and then you ask, how can we make a plan to sit down and make decisions together? This is the I statement, and then the ask for the need to be met without blame. So this is a great way to shift a conversation in a positive way. So hopefully that kind of helps you. And then we move into timing and the environment for discussions. So you do need to choose the right time. A calm and private setting for discussions ensures that both partners are mentally and emotionally ready to engage constructively, avoiding heightened emotions, distractions, or embarrassment. Your partner so here's an example. So your partner might have embarrassed you by making you the topic of a joke at a party or a family gathering. This is just an example. But becoming angry or discussing it at the party is not the appropriate time to have this conversation in front of other people. Or your partner may have forgotten to do something you've repeatedly asked them to do, but approaching them about it when they walk in the door from work in front of the kids is not the time to discuss this. Does that make sense? This does require a bit of self-restraint, because if you're embarrassed at a party, it can be difficult not to respond angrily in the moment. But this is only going to lead to more embarrassment and poor communication in the end. The other partner is going to feel attacked. They're going to feel more defensive. I can't believe that you acted like that in front of my family, that kind of thing. So the timing of the conversation is really important to avoid awkward, inappropriate displays in front of other people. Take a deep breath, learn to regulate your emotions, and plan to discuss it later when you can be alone. Okay? Next one is seeking win-win solutions. Win-win solutions. When conversations or discussions are engaged in with one partner seeking to be right or get what they want out of it, nobody wins. Okay? When you've proven that you're right, doesn't mean you won or that this is going to end up having a good outcome for you. Win-win solutions focus on finding outcomes that meet the needs of both partners, fostering collaboration and ensuring neither one feels overlooked or invalidated. You can tell the health of a relationship when each partner is concerned for the welfare and happiness of the other one. Therefore, they consider their partner in every solution. If your partner does not consider your feelings, your wants, your needs, and desires in decision-making or problem-solving, this is a huge issue. This is a red flag. because they are prioritizing themselves over you. That is never going to end well. If your concerns are instantly dismissed, if they accuse you of being jealous or making a big deal out of nothing and just want to go on doing whatever they want to do without any regard for how you feel about it, this is a huge red flag. Relationships can only be healthy if both partners are willing to work toward a healthy relationship and if both partners want to do the work to have a healthy relationship, right? If they want it. Now, when I say, I know you might think, of course everyone wants a healthy relationship. That's actually not true. I mean, it may be on a really deep level, but it is actually not true. There are some people out there who have deep emotional or childhood wounds that prevent them from being able to emotionally connect or to properly attach in relationships. And they don't really even want a healthy, emotionally connected and committed relationship. They don't even want it. They are uncomfortable with that emotional vulnerability. They actually thrive on just using other people rather than having a deep connection because it's vulnerable. And they often tend to be unfaithful in relationships more often. They often engage in using other people just to physically please themselves. And they just would rather be completely detached, emotionally withdrawn. They engage in behaviors to buffer and avoid emotion, like drinking, gaming, endless scrolling on their phone, pornography, anything that provides a false sense of stimulation or a dopamine hit without any emotional involvement or attachment. It's toxic to them and the other people in their life or the people that they are using. And they're never going to find happiness, fulfillment, and joy in doing this, in any of this, because it provides this false sense of stimulation without any attachment, love, joy, and connection, which is what we all really need. It's the intimate connection that provides joy. If that isn't involved in the situation, it just provides more emptiness when it's over. It's a short, fleeting moment, and you need more and more and more and more. And it's like this bottomless pit. You can't get enough. Drinking, it's a bottomless pit. You're never going to be able to do enough drinking to make you happy, to feel connected and emotionally whole. So you keep doing it over and over. Gaming, same thing. It doesn't fulfill the need. It just gives a dopamine hit. And it's like drugs or anything else. You just keep needing it. Endless scrolling on your phone. Even pornography, it's empty. It doesn't provide what you really actually need. And so it is a bottomless pit. You constantly need more and more and more. It's not emotionally fulfilling. It's not intimately fulfilling. It provides, it can't fulfill what you actually need. You're just using other human beings to try to please yourself. It never provides true joy. If you're not willing to do the healing work, they will continue in self-sabotaging behaviors, using and exploiting other people while buffering their own emotions. These people cannot have healthy relationships. And if you're in a relationship with them, healthy communication, connection, love, respect will never happen. It can't. Because in their brain, it's all about using other people. They don't want emotional connection. They might think they do, but at the end of the day, they just want gratification. And it's going to be really hard to be in a healthy relationship with them. In fact, it's just impossible. So I am going to end this here and go into part 2 because I realized that we are going to need to do this in 2 parts. I didn't think I would do this, but I realized we need to. So we're going to end this one here and move on in. I will see you in part 2.